All right, so I'm still doing factoring this week. This example that I'm about to work on, or these examples that I will be talking about today, we'll be using factoring to solve equations. All right, so factoring to solve an equation. All right, so using factoring to solve quadratic equations. So these in particular today will be quadratic equations. Basically, a quadratic equation means if you were to look at the whole equation, the highest exponent that you see should be a 2, all right? If you're looking at a second degree, that's what we're talking about, quadratics, all right? All right, so the first thing we have to do is, if you see this number here, we have to get everything to one side of the equal sign. So that shouldn't stay there. We got to move it about right there. That's where it's going to fit. All right, so what you learn in algebra is that you can add and subtract things to move terms across the equal sign. That's basically what's about to happen here. So that negative 36, when I stick it over here, it'll be a positive 36. The other two that you see here, these are just going to continue to come down. So now I have an expression, a quadratic expression right here on the left side of the equal sign. And since this is gone and there's nothing else left, you just put a 0 there. That's your start. Okay, so we have to think about the number on the end, and we have to figure out how do we get to the term in the middle. So remember, there's so many different ways we can look at 36. You got 1 times 36, 2 times 18, 3 times 12, 4 times 9, 6 times 6. And out of all the ones that I just mentioned, 4 times 9 is the one that resonates because 4 plus 9 is 13. So if I have a positive 36 and I know my middle term is a 13, well, technically it's a negative 13, I at least know I can start with my x times x, and I also know that I can do my 9 times 4. But remember, this is a positive 36. This is a negative 13. That means both of these numbers have to be negative for that to happen. Because a negative times a negative is a positive, but a negative plus a negative is still a negative. So these two are my factors. All right, so just think about this real quick. If I have two things being multiplied together and my answer is 0, that means one of these can be 0 or both of these can be 0, right? So what number can I put here? I could put a 4 here. What's 4 minus 4? 4 minus 4 is 0. So x is equal to 4 is one of those numbers that I can use to get to that 0. But if I look over here, 9 minus 9 can also give me a 0. So x is equal to 9 is my other possible solution. So we got two solutions here, 4 or 9. Either one of these will get me to that answer. Remember, once you find your solutions, or once you have found your answer per se, right, what you want to do is you want to verify. Anytime, especially when you first start off on any type of skill, once you get your final answer and you think that you're correct, we have to go from thinking we're correct to knowing we're correct, right? The only way you can do that is verify. Remember, a solution is not just an answer. A solution is a true statement. So if you have an answer that is not a true statement, you have not found a solution. So these two are the ones that I found. These are the answers that I've gotten, right? What we're going to do is take one of these solutions and we're going to go right back to the original problem. And since I'm going to start with the number 4. So I wrote down the original problem, and everywhere there was an x, I put a blank set of parentheses, because x is now going to be a value of 4. So if I put a 4 here and a 4 there, that should give me a 16. 4 to the second power is 16. And 13, this times that should be a 52. And if you do 16 minus 52, you will get a negative 36. So look at this. I have a negative 36 here, And that's exactly what I should have gotten there. So I have verified my first solution. All right, so since I verified my first solution, now I can look at my second one. That's a 9. So I have my original problem. I have my blank parentheses to replace my x values. And this time my x value is going to be replaced with a 9. So that gives me an 81. This gives me a minus 117. And 81 minus 117 is a negative 36 again. So once again, that verifies. That means this is also my solution because it is a true statement. All right, so I have a word problem here. It says a diver jumps from a platform that is 32 feet above the water. How long will it take the diver to hit the water? So I'm going to get this going real quick so that you can see. So right here, that little dot right there, that's where the diver is at the top of the platform. That's 32 feet right now. So we're going to take a look at what happens or the path that this is going to take. Wait, hold on. All right, so the path that this one is going to take, let's go. Bam, hits the water. So that's like the path that it's taking. So this person dives off the diving board and goes straight into the water. All right. What I did not write on there was the function that described the motion of that diver. So we call that a position function because this will tell you the position of that diver at any time you plug in a certain number of seconds. So T is going to be your number of seconds. I could put in 0 seconds, half a second, whole second, 1.5 seconds, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds, whatever the case may be, right? So once I plug in that number into this function, this can do the calculation. So we're looking at a quadratic right now. This whole thing is a quadratic. And when I look at these numbers, negative 16, positive 16, and positive 32, the first thing that I think about is I could divide everything by negative 16. So that's going to be my first move. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that step. Normally when we teach this, we don't show this step. We don't show the division part. But that's literally what I'm about to show you. So what happens when you divide those out, they become a 1. We like to say they cancel out. That's like a bad habit of mine. That divides and give you a positive 1. So I'm going to say 1 t to the second. This divides out and give you a negative 1. So negative 1 t. This divides over here and gives you a negative 2. And what I have is 1t squared minus 1t minus 2 with the common factor of a negative 16 on the outside. All right, those are my factors. So if I look inside of these parentheses, I'm back at looking at this number, which is a negative 2. And then this term right here is a negative 1. Remember, you don't have to show that 1. It's understood to be a negative 1. So, and then now I have a t to the second power on the front. The first term is normally the easiest term to get correct because all you really have to do is say t times t. The fact that we're using the number 2 is pretty easy too because you only have one option, and that's 1 times 2. 1 times 2. So I have a t times t, and I have a 1 times 2. Now that's when we have to think about the middle term of a negative 1. If I put a negative on the 2 and a positive on the 1, then what I have is a negative 1. So these are now my factors. So what I like about word problems is it forces you to comprehend things a certain way. Everything that you need to get the question correct is in the question. You have to know how to read it and think about it. So remember, the main question here is how long will it take the diver to hit the water? The key word is hit the water. The water is on the ground. So how tall is the water? The water is 0 feet. See what I'm saying? The platform is 32 feet high, but the water is at 0. So when we're trying to find out when something hits the water or hits the ground, basically we're trying to find out when that function itself hits 0. So I have my function in factor form, and notice how right here is equal to 0. The problem itself didn't say set your problem equal to 0. The problem asks when do we hit the water. That translates into an equal 0. So if we think about what we did before and we look in these parentheses, how is this going to be a 0? If that's a positive 1, I need that to be a negative 1. So boom, negative 1 is one of your solutions. We look at this one. How's this going to be 0? If I put a 2 here, 2 minus 2 is 0, so t has to be equal to 2 also. And remember, this is a position function. If I put in a certain number of seconds, it's going to give me a certain height, right? There's no such thing as negative 1 seconds. So that is not my possible answer, not in the context of this problem. This is the one that makes the most sense. It takes this person 2 seconds to hit the water. And even on my graph here, and I had it set up a way where you can kind of see this person dive and then start making this fall. And if you pay attention to right there, there's your 2 seconds right there. So technically in 2 seconds, that's when we hit the ground.